let's take a look. As we said in the headline, and as you just alluded to, Zach, there's been quite the coconut pilling occurring on Twitter over the last couple of days. So as people have kind of come to terms with the fact that Joe Biden either, isn't going to be the nominee, or if he is going to be the nominee, he's going to lose. And that's basically not even up for debate anymore. So it's pretty hard to root for a team that is going to lose, or that may not even actually, be the team come game day, right? This has, of course, led a lot of people to embrace Vice President Madam Kamala Harris herself. And if you've been on Twitter over the last 24 hours or so, you probably have seen some of this, and you might be a little bit confused by it, specifically if you're like a Bernie Sanders progressive, all of a sudden seeing a bunch of other, Bernie Sanders progressives celebrating Kamala Harris, top cop of California, someone that we all hated. Well, I'm here to tell you guys, most of it is ironic. There's a lot of memes going around, stuff like that. A lot of it is people just kind of trying to post through the horror of everything and the bleakness of, this 2024 general election that we're all staring down the barrel of. But there have been some people like Mehdi Hasan, some more, serious commentators and journalists, actually making the case, unironically, for Vice President Harris. And I'm interested, Zach, your opinion on all of this. And at the outset of this conversation, let's just state the obvious and put aside the fact that neither of us agree with Kamala Harris in any way, shape, or form. If there was an actual primary, she would be at the very bottom of the list of candidates as far as who we would be enthusiastic about.
I should make a compilation of all the horrendous things that Gavin's ever said about Kamala Harris, about how she has no charisma, she's horribly unlikable, that you could replace her with just about any nationally known Democrat and it would do numbers for Joe Biden's polling, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
Yep. But anyway, that's on the table right now. Obviously, neither of us are supporters of Kamala Harris's politics. We're not in alignment. She's a neoliberal Democrat. She's tough on crime. We could literally spend the next 30 minutes outlining all of the vast differences politically between this podcast and the positions of Kamala Harris. But because we're all mature adults here and political commentators, we're going to actually be talking about whether or not, she would be in any sense electable, how she would do against Trump. So just leave our politics at the door for the most of this discussion. Obviously, we don't have a progressive in the race right now. As far as the general election candidates go that aren't third-party long shots, it's either going to be Joe Biden, Kamala Harris, or another one of these establishment neoliberal Democrats. And that's what we're talking about. So we're going to discuss the horse race as it is happening, not how we wish it was happening. Like I said, it's not like, Bernie Sanders is an alternative here. It's going to be Kamala, Joe Biden, Gavin Newsom, someone like that. So, let's understand that as we go forward. Here's Mehdi Hasan's piece in The Guardian. Kamala may be our only hope. Biden should step aside and endorse her. Before we get into some of the details of this article, as well as some of the other pieces and opinions which outline the case for Kamala, Zach, what do you think about all this? Do you think it's all just kind of pure cope, or do you think there actually might be something here? Do you think Kamala would do well against Trump? What do you think?
So I think there's a lot to unpack here. Everybody knows, just so I can get, my allegiances out of the way, I was very skeptical about the backdoor backroom deal to install a candidate a la Hubert Humphrey, right? Not my taste. I think that that's something that we as Americans have, grown past, or we'd like to, especially in the age of the internet where all the information's at our fingertips. Yeah. I just think it would be a huge miscalculation and such a, finger in the eye
to do a
brokered
brokered convention.
Well, to do a behind the scenes brokered convention. What I wouldn't be opposed to now, and something that I've seen being tossed about, if the Democrats allow, or, if Joe Biden, first and foremost, I think he has to, before any of this happens, he has to say, guys, I've decided, I'm in time for the Democrats to have a, national convention. I'm not seeking re-election. I intend to finish my term, which I'm fully capable of. And I will lend my backing to whomever will be my successor because I need to unite the Democratic Party. That's the best case scenario for the Dems. I think Gavin and I and almost everybody in our chat can agree on that starting point. Joe Biden is not capable. And if we want to have any semblance of democracy, people need to reach him and have him decide to not resign, but withdraw his name from the presidential election, right? That's the bare minimum. So I want to start there. Do I think that's a good idea? Do I think that's on the table? I think there's about a 5 to 10% chance that through the grace of God, people are able to reach Joe Biden, and through all of the selfishness of Hunter Biden and Jill Biden and whoever is in his camp, right? The Biden hardcores, the loyalists, the people who, when he didn't have a shot of a shout in Iowa, were hanging with him. Those people who now have a fucking White House at their disposal, they're not going to hang up their shoes. Like, so if they can get past all that, I think there's a max about a 10% chance of that
Biden decides on his own accord, I'm stepping down.
On his own accord. Yeah. That he makes a televised appearance, which he says, I am not, I'm withdrawing my name from the race. Okay. Yeah. Starting at that point, I think then the best case scenario is far, far from Kamala. Far from Kamala. I think you need to have a fair and open as you can with the Democrats. You guys understand. I don't need to get on that diatribe with Gavin, right? About it. We all know the fucking Democrats are going to cheat and weasel and do whatever they can to get their guy to the top of the ticket. Now, we also know their guy is not going to be Kamala Harris, because I've been beating around the bush a long way and saying, I don't think that Kamala Harris can beat Donald Trump. I do not think that Kamala Harris can beat Donald Trump. Unfortunately, would I like to see her win? Yes. Would I vote for her? Not personally. I wouldn't do it. But could I see a lot of people being motivated to vote for her because she has, way higher brain power? Even in all of my criticisms of her, she is a lucid adult individual, right? That you could functionally communicate with, right? Which is more than you could say about Joe Biden. Like, her bedtime's not 8 p.m. She doesn't say only reachable between 10 and 4 p.m. I'm the president, right? 10 a.m. and 4 p.m. Anyway, ridiculous stuff. So I don't think she can beat Donald Trump. So I almost think it's the definition of hysteric copium for people who sincerely post the Kamala stuff. Like, oh, we just need Kamala to save us, because she won't save you, dude. You'll still get Donald Trump. I think that's why it's funny when leftists tweet it out, because it's just like, it's just showing, it's, biting your thumb at the establishment, basically. It's just throwing it back at them. It's like, you could do this swap, but you guys are so terrible at your job. Your forecasting skills are immeasurably bad, and you're about to reap what you sow. And all of us are going to suffer the consequences of it while you still stay at the Ritz-Carlton and fundraise off the fact that all of our rights are up for grabs. Do you want to be able to be shot by the president? Do you want to lose your First Amendment? Do you want to have more guns on the street? Do you want to have less taxes for the billionaire aristocracy? Do you want to have more dead people in fucking Palestine? Like, no, thank you. So I think the only actual legitimate path that would show me interest, beyond the fact that I'm a commentator and I'm interested in the ins and outs of what the Democratic Party chooses to do because I forced myself to be interested in it, right? I think they have to have a brokered convention, but in a way where they allow at least 4 candidates to compete with each other for the American public's will, which, again, it's like, how do they orchestrate that? How do they create trust with the Democratic Party base that it's not going to be fucked with? One of the candidates has to be Kamala. The other one will be Gretchen Whitmer. Another one will be Gavin Newsom. And then I think we get a 4th curveball. If I'm forecasting this and this actually runs out, I think it's probably J.B. Pritzker. I think they go 2 white guys that are pretty safe with the establishment, and then they go Gretch and Kamala. And I think it probably the dust settles with Gretch. And I think that Gretchen Whitmer, I still think she probably loses to Donald Trump, but I think she has the best chance at it. And the reason I say that is because I don't know how much she'll be able to move the needle in places like Pennsylvania, in places like Nevada, Kamala? Arizona. No, Gretchen Whitmer. I know Kamala will lose all of those states. So I don't even consider Kamala an option, because I just think she's basically the same as Joe Biden. She might be able to have some measure of a better performance against Donald Trump on a debate stage. I'm not denying that, right? Any of us on this fucking podcast could do a better, including listeners, could do a better job than Joe Biden did debating foreign policy and domestic policy than Joe Biden did. So of course, Kamala Harris would show an improvement of a margin, but it wouldn't make up the insane ground. The other thing that I don't think a lot of people are grasping is we're 4 months away from the fucking general election of the United States. So there's no time for a ground game for anybody that they swap out. And Joe Biden has done zero work up until this point. And right now he's 6 points underwater in a general election poll, which, with our skewed ass democracy, let's call that 9 points over. And the hardest places to win them back are the places that he needs to win them back. So I don't know. So yeah, there's a lot of interesting stuff there. And let me throw this up on screen, because I do think you kind of alluded to these comments from Clyburn. I assume he's who you're referencing as far as floating a mini primary to replace Biden as the nominee. We should open up everything. And that's interesting, because Clyburn has now, had a few different positions when asked. First, he was 100% behind Biden. And then he was basically saying that, I stand behind Biden, but
if there's going to be a different candidate, it has to be Kamala. And I'm 100% behind the vice president. Now he's floating a mini primary to replace Biden. And that, I chuckle just imagining Kamala's, response to this news. She thought Clyburn was 100% behind her. Now he's saying mini primary. She's like, what the hell? I still think that Kamala would probably do the best in like this sort of mini primary if they had a brokered convention where the delegates had to fight for a new candidate. You know what I'm saying? If they had to go elsewhere, I do think that Kamala has a good chance of doing pretty well. But Clyburn is floating the mini primary to replace Biden as the nominee. So I do have some pushback, though, against what you were saying about Kamala Harris, because obviously I agree that she's completely untalented. She's uncharismatic. She's not the most inspiring candidate. She's no, Barack Obama, obviously, despite the way the media
tried. Not even a Bernie Sanders in terms of her microphone presence, and that wasn't even Bernie's strong suit at all.
Well, it's weird. I actually have to push back on that a little bit, Zach, because if you watch clips of Kamala Harris up until basically the 2019, 2020 Democratic primary, that's actually not true. She was known for being incredibly articulate. That's how, partially how she became the prosecutor, the attorney general or whatever in California. She really was known for this aggressive kind of prosecutorial style of delivery. We saw a glimpse of it on the first night at the debate stage against Joe Biden, where she had her moment saying that little girl was me. A lot of people were like, oh shit, yeah, this is going to be Kamala Harris's race to lose. That's how talented people considered her as a political communicator. And despite the fact that she had to drop out before, the state of Iowa even voted,
her home state of California
before that, and then was selected by Joe Biden to be the nominee. A lot of people really thought she was going to do way better in that race. And like I said, she won a Senate race before then. It's not like she's never had any success winning an election before. She clearly is capable of it. For whatever reason, it seems like towards the end of the primary and then after getting selected as vice president, Kamala Harris just like lost her lust for life or something. She lost her ambition and maybe, developed a benzo habit. That's the best theory I have. I'm not even joking because she really went from being this like kind of articulate, aggressive prosecutorial communicator to more of like a ditzy wine mom vibe. People obviously love posting the clips of her just like awkwardly laughing and kind of losing her train of thought. It doesn't really seem like she cares that much about policy anymore. Whenever you do hear her talk, she's kind of just like rambling about, whatever the fuck she wants to. It's not like she's on the stump, like talking about healthcare, talking about immigration, or even really abortion, despite the fact that they've sort of tried to make that her, milieu in the White House, abortion. She doesn't really seem to be like fired up, right? But I think that if Biden stepped aside and all of a sudden she was in charge, she was no longer just, in the shadows, being propped up to do defensive media for Joe Biden, someone who she doesn't even probably like that much in the first place, hence the attack on debate stage night one. If you put her in charge, I do think she gets back some of that mojo. I think all of a sudden she feels a renewed sense of confidence. Now, again, this is her party. She's not, this token black lady VP that they only pick to appease BLM protesters. No, now she's the candidate. She's the one, at least the one to beat, if not straight up the candidate. So I do think, she would have a renewed sense of self, a renewed sense of purpose and passion in the wake of such a shakeup. I also think that we can't deny or underestimate the fact that the media is going to go into overdrive trying to manufacture consent for Kamala Harris to rebrand her, to reintroduce her to the public, to try to make us forget about all the cringe that's kind of defined her vice presidency by hyper-focusing on all of that stuff that I just mentioned, what led up to her becoming such a rising star in the first place up until 2019 when she had that embarrassing Democratic Party primary run that somehow still led to her getting the vice presidential spot. I think there would be a lot of propaganda, a lot of people talking about, her career highs as opposed to her career lows, and also really going with the whole angle and dynamic framing wise with this election that it's like prosecutor versus criminal. Trump's 36 convicted felons or whatever, or he has 36 felonies. Who's Kamala Harris? All of a sudden, top cop doesn't sound so bad. That's exactly what the Democrats want. They want someone to come in there and literally prosecute the case against Donald Trump. I've been saying they want someone to prosecute the case against Donald Trump, but who better than an actual fucking prosecutor? Someone who can unironically go out there and be like, yeah, this is what I did for fucking years. This is what I did. So I think that there's a couple angles there. And then the other one that I had to mention real quick before I, let you respond, Zach, is that while it's true she's massively unlikable and her coastal elitism will certainly rub people wrong in states like Pennsylvania, I do think one thing we can't forget is that she would get to select a vice president. And that could also bring a whole new level of interest to the ticket if she all of a sudden does pick a rising star like Andy Beshear from Kentucky. That would make a good contrast to her sort of coastal elitism, right? Her California vibe, to have someone from the Midwest or the South attached to her ticket, someone who's considered a little bit less of kind of ambitious elitist Democrat and more of just like a working, blue collar Democrat. I think that could kind of make for a dynamic duo, actually. Not, again, that it would be something that would excite me, but the country ain't feeling good about 2024, right? No one's excited about this rematch. And while I agree, it's a very late start as far as ground game and name recognition, I actually think the lack of baggage might be the best thing possible for any candidate in this race, at least against Donald Trump, because Trump has so much baggage. And yeah, you sub in some, random Democrat or even Kamala Harris, who definitely does have baggage, but still, it ain't nothing compared to what Trump has. At least it gives people kind of a fresh start, an opportunity to make up their minds for themselves and not have their opinion of the candidate be defined by like literally, the last 10 years of mishaps and disasters.
I think that you quite possibly made the best case anybody could make for Kamala Harris. I just happen to disagree with it, right? I think if you gave her the best look from every direction and you were just gassing her up and you were like, I have to go out there and sell this lady, otherwise I can't pay rent tomorrow. Like, you went up there and you stumped better than I've ever seen, man. It almost brought a tear to my eye. I was ready to go to bat for the top cop of California,
Kamala, new press secretary.
You know what I mean? I get it. Gavin almost moved me.
So I did want to take a look before we get out of here at this clip of Mehdi Hasan on Chris Cuomo, just to hear him laying out the case for Kamala Harris, see if he can convince you, since I wasn't able to.
No, he won't be able to, but let's go ahead and hear it from Mehdi himself.
Mehdi Hasan,
making weight, just surfing in him.
Yep. Chief and founder of news platform Zeteo. Okay, smart guy, very good analyst and arguer, and you're about to see that. So,
thank you,
Mehdi Hasan. Let you start.
Before we hear from Mehdi, who I imagine is going to have lots of insightful things to say, let's just think about for a second the dullard who tuned into whatever the fuck news network broadcast Andrew Cuomo is doing. He has to talk to his audience like this. Otherwise, they might lose track of what he is saying. Now, this man, his name is Mehdi Hasan, but don't be worried because it sounds different. He's very, very smart, okay? He's going to tell you what you want to hear about Joe Biden. That's how he has to talk to his audience of fucking ignorant dumbasses now, because he's been shit canned from CNN. And Mehdi, God bless him, he's so desperate to reach the Democratic Party that he'll go high and low. He'll stop at nothing. He'll even come out to reach the dullards and dumbasses to be like, please, can you unite in a chorus of fucking calling for Joe Biden to stand down for once, do something meaningful with your worthless little lives? Anyway, let's hear from Mehdi.
Governors come out and say, we're good with Joe. Why isn't that the end of the conversation?
Thanks for having me, Chris. Just want to correct something from your very interesting, excellent monologue in many ways. I'm not a Democrat, right? I'm a progressive. I'm of the left. I'm not a member of the Democratic Party. I'm not approaching this as a Democrat. Well, I am actually as a small d Democrat. The reason I have a skin in this game, why I care about this fight, is because I care about the future of American democracy. As you say, we're about to celebrate the 4th of July, independence, American history. I believe all of that is at stake come November. And the only thing I care about is stopping the proto-fascist candidate that the GOP are putting up once again. And when I look at the polls, when I look at the debate last week, when I look at the numbers, it just is very clear that Joe Biden is in a very bad place, as you laid out in the introduction. No president has ever been this unpopular at this stage in the cycle, so close to election day. Thursday night was a car crash of a debate. That's when I came out and said he should step aside. I've never said that before. I said it Thursday night because it was just ridiculous what we saw on Thursday night. And because I see no way back for Joe Biden. One thing I've been waiting for the last few days is for a plan. What is the plan that Joe Biden has to recover all the voters he's losing by the day? He's down.
Mehdi must have missed the memo about the 15-minute interview with George Stephanopoulos. That seems like a good plan to me.
Oh, man. I think that would have assuaged a lot of his fears. 15 minutes of planning? That's at least, on Joe Biden time, what, one question, maybe two? Listen, Jack. Yeah, it's pretty crazy. Also, Mehdi's the one Brit who gets a pass.
Yeah,
he lives in America.
Yep.
Down 6 points in the New York Times poll today among likely voters, 9 points among 8 points, amongst registered voters. In fact, the most crucial stat, Chris, in that poll is that the number of Republican voters who want Biden to stay on as the nominee has gone up, not down, since last week, because the Republicans know he's eminently beatable. So I want to hear what the plan is. I don't think there's a plan. They briefed to Axios, Team Biden, he's going to give a great convention speech. We may get an interest rate cut, and that's going to deliver victory. That's BS. They're in a very bad place. If they switch now to Kamala Harris, they have some chance of recovering ground, having a younger, more effective prosecutor of the case, someone who can maybe turn the page on Gaza, and someone who could actually rhetorically.
She would not, in fact, turn the page on Gaza. Sorry, Mehdi.
There is another debate.
I think that Mehdi is effectively smoking the hopium crack pipe if he thinks that Kamala would have any difference in foreign policy than Joe Biden. I think that she might be slightly more reachable just because she would have a better sense of saving her own skin than Joe Biden had when he just continuously just was the most tone-deaf man on the planet. But if you think that Kamala Harris is going to come out and stop sending weapons to Israel or something I don't think that's going to happen.
I think what he's talking more about is just the optics of it.
Being more sophisticated. Yeah.
Not just that, but also the fact that, even though she was vice president, she wasn't commander in chief. Biden has been commander in chief during the course of this whole war. So you can't, we could, but your average voter won't quite associate her as much with the blame for that. And if she's able to just start campaigning from a fresh start, she could more just talk about a ceasefire.
I just don't know if she would.
I think she would. There was actually reporting early on with the Israel war that she disagreed with Biden's handling of it, that she wanted to distance herself from their approach, and that he should actually
better sense of saving her skin then. Reading the room and understanding how historically unpopular it is. I just don't see a humanitarian response coming from her.
Oh, I agree that the politics would be no different. She's not going to stand up to Netanyahu in a serious way. But I do think just as far as optics and campaigning goes, people would put the blame for what's already happened less at her feet. They would be yeah, that was Biden. You can't really blame Kamala. She was vice president. She wasn't literally making those decisions. And again, if she only talked about we're going to end the war, we're going to achieve a ceasefire, and not we're going to keep giving more and more and more money to Israel, then I do think people would at least associate her more with a peace position. And she could theoretically win back some of those Michigan voters that have fled the Biden campaign.